receive the award.
It's 9 o'clock, and I'd like to open the meeting. The invocation will be by our own Mr. Jim Davis, and the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Sandra Bowden. Please rise.
Almighty, sovereign, and majestic God, we call upon your divine presence with us this morning. Grant our leaders wisdom in making decisions for the future of our great county. Temper our debate with respect for each person in attendance. Let us follow your will and not our changing desires. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The only addition to the agenda is item 13A under my items. Well, we need to have an approval of the agenda as amended. It's not on here.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion.
What are you adding under
13A, I'm adding a letter from my report from Commissioner Bronson about the meeting. There are no proclamations and presentations. Approval of minutes. November 14th, joint meeting, City of Vero Beach.
I move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6B, November 15th, 2005, regular meeting.
Move approval.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6C, November 17th, 2005, joint meeting with the City of Sebastian.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And 6D, the December 1st, 2005, joint meeting with the City of Fellsmere.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda. Item 7.
Move approval of consent agenda.
Second.
I would like to pull one of the items for discussion. Land acquisition. Item
F.
7F.
F.
Yes.
So moved.
We have a
amended.
motion.
So moved as amended.
Second.
I moved to approve the consent agenda as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let me get to page 15. There are several changes to one of my committees, the Land Acquisition Advisory Committee. And one of them I was wondering about was the replacement of Mr. Talmadge Rogers. I understand, according to the ordinance, that he is not a representative of the Chamber of Commerce, but strictly a member of the Chamber of Commerce. And I wonder if we want to replace him. Mike Walther is an excellent suggestion for replacing him, but Talmadge has been on this committee since his inception in 1990, and I think he's a very good member. And I wonder if we would want to approve this. I understand he had some differences with the Chamber people. And what's your feeling on this?
Mr. Chairman, I have, in general, I have some questions, and I'm not even sure, perhaps legal could shed some light on this. If it is by ordinance that these specific agencies appoint members to the committee, I almost see it as just an exercise more than anything else for us to be approving them. I mean, do we really have the authority, according to the ordinance, to not appoint somebody that a particular agency that's responsible in the ordinance to appoint to this board?
We don't necessarily have to.
My reading of the ordinance is that the cities, each city has a representative, and they are appointed by the city. But the rest of them are only people who must belong to that
Organization.
just be a member.
And it's
I
not.
read the ordinance. I didn't have it with me. Do you have it
Got it
with
right
you?
here.
It's not an ordinance, it's a resolution. Resolutions can be modified by the board at any time. I think when it says representative, you've delegated the authority to the municipalities to make their own appointments. When it's a member, that carries a different connotation. You want representation across the board, but I think you have more discretion when the resolution says a member of rather than a representative of.
Right.
And I think that's specifically the reason, as you read through the list of 14 members, some say representative, some say member. And I talked to Will about that, and I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion to leave Talmadge on.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion?
I think the only discussion I have, and I, don't get me wrong, I have nothing wrong with Talmadge, but you have a situation where you have a letter in backup from the Chamber of Commerce saying that they don't want him to be the representative, they have someone else, and it's no different than us as commissioners having representatives that serve our term. And when our term's up, they leave. And I don't want to begin to set precedents of, well, the Chamber says we don't want Talmadge, and we come along and say we don't abide by what the Chamber wants.
Can we,
He is not a representative of the Chamber. He
Right.
only has to be a member of the Chamber of Commerce.
Correct.
The other thing I'd like to say, too, is I think Mr. Newberger is the liaison.
True.
You attend most of those meetings. I've attended many of them.
True.
And Talmadge is a very valuable member
Yeah.
of that, and periodically disagrees with the majority. And I think that's positive, just like this commission. We have some very serious debate about different issues, and I think that's the best way for government to work, and Talmadge adds that flavor to the committee.
And I think if it's the wish of that commission liaison, obviously I have no problem with that.
Well, I would leave the decision up to you guys, but I would like to see Talmadge remain on. Nothing against Mike Walder. Mike Walder's
No,
a
Mike's
coastal
good. I
engineer,
talked to
and he
Mike
would be
this morning.
perfect on the Beach Renourishment Committee.
I agree. I think Talmadge does a good service to all of us and to the committee, and let's keep him on.
my only concern is I had some conversation with him, and is he still willing to serve?
Yes.
He is?
I've not had a conversation.
I've talked to him twice.
Okay.
But he also, well, to answer the question, he is willing to serve, and in fact, if another opening at large came about, he said he would be willing to serve in that capacity later on, but none are available, both are filled. And but anyway, we have a motion and a
We do.
second.
We have a motion and a
Call
second.
the vote.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries to leave Talmadge Rogers on the Land Acquisition Committee.
Now,
Thank you.
do we need a motion to approve item F?
Yes, I thought we just had it.
I think it was just approved.
There was more than just one person, and I thought we just voted on whether or not to change
Oh, that's true.
Talmadge Rogers.
Okay.
With,
We do need a motion.
so to approve consent F, please.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, under item 8, constitutional officers and governmental agencies, none. Public items. Public hearing. Showcase Designer Homes, LC's request for plan development, PD, special exception use, and preliminary PD plan/plat approval for a project to be known as Orchard Park.
Good morning. I'm Stan Bowling, Planning Director. The proposed project is a residential plan development project located in an area zoned for single-family development up to 3 units per acre. The site is located on the east side of 58th Avenue and the north side of 5th Street Southwest. You can see that the area including this site and on the east side of 58th Avenue is zoned for single-family residential. What you see underlying in the yellow, including this site, is zoned residential single-family up to 3 units per acre. That's the same zoning as Stonebridge, Hammock Lakes 2, and Hammock Lakes 1 and 2. Farther to the south, on the south side of the South Relief Canal, zone plan development is Citrus Springs, again, less than 3 units per acre, consistent with the RS3 zoning. To the north of the site, in the blue shading, is a property that's still zoned A1, agricultural, but it is also within the urban service area boundary. And I do want to point out on this map, the urban service area boundary generally runs along 58th Avenue in this part of the county. On the east side is inside the urban service area, and to the west is outside, but there's also, in this particular area, a 40-acre tract that is within the urban service area that's on the west side of Kings Highway. So what you have is the urban service area boundary coming down Kings Highway, then going out west of Kings Highway, including this RS1 zone property, and then back along 58th Avenue. So a portion of this site's west boundary is adjacent to a portion of the county that's outside the urban service boundary, and the rest of it abuts properties in the urban service area boundary. The properties to the east and to the south of the site are zoned between, are planned for development, and in some cases developed at between 2 and 3 units per acre. This particular project proposes 2 units per acre. I'd like to go to a shot of the aerial of this area. Again, the site is outlined in yellow. The urban service area boundary is in the dashed red line. This property, the subject property, is actually, it's two approximately 20-acre sites that have formerly been in citrus. There are some residential and agricultural buildings on the site. Those would be removed with this project, but there are no environmentally sensitive or environmentally significant properties or areas on this particular property. The proposed layout is much like a standard single-family subdivision with one access point off of First Street Southwest, no access off of 58th Avenue, and there is an intervening canal between the site and 58th Avenue. This proposed entrance would line up with the entrance to Hammock Lakes 1 and 2 project that's to the south of First Street Southwest. The layout itself, again, has basically a loop road and a couple of cul-de-sacs. There are perimeter buffers, which I'll get into in a moment, that go around the entire perimeter. The area that's shaded green is common green space and recreation area. The blue shaded areas are stormwater management lakes that are proposed. So you can see generally from this layout that most of the units in the development will be pretty far to the north of First Street Southwest. And there are only 6 lots that come close to the western boundary of the site itself. The reason that the planned development special exception request is before you all is because there are some waivers that have been requested, waivers from the normal RS3 requirements in the code. And I want to go over some of those changes or waivers from the RS3. The RS3 minimum lot size is 12,000 square feet. What is proposed with this development is 10,000 square feet on the perimeters and 9,300 square foot minimum lot size on the interiors. That's similar to the planned development project to the east, which is Hammock Lakes 3. These lots are actually a bit larger than the Hammock Lakes 1 and 2 planned development lots to the south. 80-foot minimum width is proposed on the perimeter lots, 75 on the interior lots, and there are also waivers in terms of front and side yard setbacks, less of a waiver on the perimeter lots, more of a waiver on the interior lots. Maximum building coverage is also proposed to be waived to allow more of the lots to be covered with building area, and that kind of makes up for the decrease in size. The standard right-of-way width is proposed to be 45 feet versus 50 feet, and there is a waiver requested from what is now required through the pending ordinances that have been adopted. A 50-foot type B as in boy buffer along the urban service area boundary. The portion of the site that abuts the urban service area boundary to the west side of Kings Highway, the proposal is for 30 feet. I want to go over a couple of items that relate to those waivers, and that is, you can see that part of what's going on with this design and the waivers that are requested are kind of trading off lot sizes for larger green areas and allowing a little more building area on these individual lots. I do want to go over the buffers on this graphic. Along the entire Kings Highway or west side of the site, what is proposed is a 30-foot wide type A buffer with 6-foot berm and hedge combination. There's also a stretch that has a 25-foot wide type B buffer along Kings Highway here on the northern portion of the site. Along the north and the east sides, a 25-foot type B as in boy buffer is proposed, as well as one along First Street Southwest. And all the buffers that are proposed are in a separate tract. I want to also compare what is proposed with the what are known still as the planning ordinance provisions, and there are some differences here. Along First Street Southwest, the buffer that's required of conventional single-family subdivisions, the 25-foot type A or B buffer, that requirement is met with this proposal, as well as the 58th Avenue buffer that's along the northern portion of the site itself. The urban service area boundary buffer that's normally 50 feet with a type B buffer, what they're proposing is a 30-foot type A buffer along that particular portion, so to narrow it down but densify it with plantings. The perimeter buffers meet the pending ordinance requirements. All the landscape buffers are in separate tracks. Where there is a wall proposed, there will be articulation and variation in the wall as is required now for conventional subdivisions. Rather than having a sidewalk on one side of an internal street, they're actually exceeding that by having sidewalks proposed on both sides of the streets within the subdivision, and they do meet the 7.5% common green area requirement. In terms of the trade-offs that are proposed, this is summarized in staff's report to you all, and there are a few public benefits over and beyond a conventional subdivision that are proposed. One is dedication of 10 feet of right-of-way for First Street Southwest without compensation. The other is turn lanes, a right turn and a left turn lane at the project entrance, even though the number of lots would not normally trip the threshold for requiring that. That is a benefit they're offering, and that would benefit traffic flow along First Street Southwest. They're also proposing to accept stormwater from First Street Southwest into the site, which could accommodate any future improvements to First Street Southwest, make it easier to do. They're also proposing a stub out to property to the north, adjacent property to the north, and that's shown on the graphic here. In the northern portion of the site, kind of the main entrance road coming off of First Street Southwest would go all the way up and stub out to the property to the north. That could accommodate an interconnection with what is now agricultural property to the north, but if and when that develops, that could allow for an interconnecting of two new neighborhood areas. The Planning and Zoning Commission considered this request and recommended 6-0 that the Board of County Commissioners approve this request with the conditions that are outlined in staff's report, with an additional condition, and that would be that two-story homes within the development be limited, that most of the lots in this development be limited to one-story homes, but up to 20% could be allowed with two-story homes, as long as two-story homes, you would not have two of them adjacent to each other, and that's reflected in the comments. After the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the applicant made staff aware of what is called a bonus room, and they did not bring this up at the Planning and Zoning Commission. It didn't occur to them. They wanted to just make sure this was clarified in the board's decision today. They do have a product type apparently that has what's called a bonus room, and that would be kind of like an attic room. It would be in a structure that has the same mass and height as a one-story, but within kind of the attic space having a bonus room. And because there's no difference between what that looks like from the outside, except for possibly dormers or something like that, in terms of the building mass and the height, staff felt that bonus room, it would be consistent with the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation to not count that as a two-story structure, since it doesn't have the same mass as a two-story structure. That's why that's added information into the board. The report staff has made to the board. Staff's recommendation and the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission are for approval with conditions that are outlined, including the two-story limitation I just referred to, final approval of the landscape plans and buffers, dedication of the right-of-way, accommodation of runoff from First Street Southwest, and the entrance turn lanes. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, I have one. In the backup, it shows this floor plan with the bonus room.
Correct.
This house called the Cypress. Do you have it there you can put on the overhead? It looks to me like a two-story house. Would you not call that a two-story house?
It is the board's discretion. You'll see the roof line of this is not as tall as a two-story. It's as tall as the rest of the one-story. Again, this is an option that the board has in terms of its discretion how it wants to treat these bonus rooms.
What would you say a two-story house is then? A room on top of the one-story house?
Let me say a couple things and answer that question. Staff did not have any concerns with two-story houses. And this is a condition that the Planning and Zoning Commission had, and staff is fine with that condition being a part of it. Staff's view of this is what the mass and height of the building is, it was the main concern that the Planning and Zoning Commission had. Whether there's a window here over this unit in the garage or not, I think actually the more articulation that a building has, I think the more comfortable the Planning and Zoning Commission would be. They were citing examples of two-story homes in areas of the county that don't have articulation, don't have, or basically two-story boxes, so to speak. And I think that was their biggest concern. And so from staff's view, this bonus room, yes, it is a room on a second floor of the structure, but the mass of the structure is the same as a one-story.
One of the things, when you look at this floor plan, the total is, including everything, 4,100 square feet. That is a very large house on a 10,000 square foot lot. Is that what we're saying? That's less than a zero lot line.
Right. The footprint is less than that because 509 square feet of that total is in the bonus room, but still, yes, it's about 3,600 square foot.
That's a large house on a small lot.
Well, that's a good point. That's one of the waivers that they're asking for.
That's not proportionate.
I'm sorry?
I wouldn't consider that proportionate to the land, the house and the land.
Okay. And that gets to the building coverage waiver that they're requesting, allowing 40% of the lot to be built on versus 30%.
Well, that 4,100 includes the porch and the lanai.
That's correct.
And the garage. So. But the roof line doesn't change from a single family to this, so I have no problem with it.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Do you have in there the South County Initiative in your computer? Is this a part of that area?
This is to the north. Well,
that's north of it, isn't it?
That's
58.
correct. Yeah,
okay, the other question, because the biggest question I have about this is the interconnectivity with what's going to be developed, where it's going to go, and not just end up by two gated communities being connected, but to other streets like up to 4th Street, which is going to be a main east-west thoroughfare. So if people are down on 1st Street Southwest and want to get up to 4th Street or find other ways to get to where they want to go without having to go to 58th or 27th or 43rd, and I'd like to see, and I think that this is going to be a gated community, the other one possibly a gated community, but I'd like to see through traffic being able to move through these neighborhoods without being restricted by gates on what would be the road, just like we did at Waterway, like we've done at the South County Initiative.
Is this gated?
What it says.
Yes, it's private. It's proposed to be private, and the board, I think, has, again, because it's a planned development, I think the board has discretion on these traffic circulation matters. A couple of issues. Obviously, we've talked about interconnectivity quite a bit, and what we've seen is that over the years it's difficult with existing neighborhoods to implement full vehicular connections versus perhaps pedestrian or emergency access. You're correct. We could be looking at two new neighborhoods and set up a public road between 1st Street Southwest and 4th Street. It is already close to 58th Avenue at this point. It's not like it's a midpoint between 58th and 43rd, but you could require public access. If you want
to go someplace, sometimes it's easier, just like in the city of Vero Beach, to take some of the side streets than it is to take Route 60. And I think we just need more and more and more connectivity, and not less and less as we move forward. I think you guys have been doing a great job in interconnectivity with the developments that come in, but for me to support this, I'd like to see the public to have access to streets and the new development when it comes in, so they can go from 1st Street Southwest to 4th Street without going out to 58th or over to 43rd.
But when you do that, you're going to have another situation like we had on 50th Avenue between 20th and 26th. The people in the little subdivision get annoyed because the traffic is detouring off of State Road 60, or in this case, it might be 58th Avenue.
Right.
So I think the interconnectivity will work well if they're both private communities, because those on the north end are going south can come down to 1st Street without having to loop around. So I think it helps to some extent to have them connected, whether they're private or not.
Well, I just think we need connectivity every place we can have it, and less gates, more connectivity.
I agree with Commissioner Newberger. I think if the internal portion of it is open to where those people in both those communities, if that be it, can have the opportunity of either going to First Street or Fourth Street. I don't see making it a public community if they want to have it a gated community. But the internal trips between the two subdivisions, if that be, can travel either one way or the other.
If we fill this up out there, which we're going to do with subdivisions, you're going to have all the traffic in those subdivisions finding their way to the main thoroughfares, which is 43rd, 27th, 58th, and that's where it's all going to end up. And if
Where it's
they have
supposed to
other,
end up.
Yeah.
well, yeah, but if they have other access, they can find their way to where they want to go by using side streets. You know, there may at some point in time be a 7-Eleven over there someplace or something they want to go to, where they don't have to go out to 40. You know, we made the same mistake, or the commission made the same mistake with Centex between 33rd and 26th. That's a gated community. There is no access to the mall from the from the north side, and that whole, any place except you've got to go to 58th, you've got to go to 43rd, and that's what we're running into all over the county, which even puts a bigger strain on those streets.
Well, and I think we've learned from that, Gary. You're talking about on this one particular site, 73 residences. I think what you're talking about there between 26 and 33rd is a whole lot more than 73.
What's going south of it, and what's going to
But
go north
I don't
of it?
know. I don't know what's going to go north of it.
Well, I think
Hammock
it
Lakes
is
is south.
wise to disperse the traffic as evenly as possible in the neighborhoods.
I agree. And that's what we're talking about, the interconnectivity
I got it.
in the middle.
Got it, thank you.
Wesley?
Yes. Right now, we have a gated community, or it's proposed to be gated on First Street Southwest and gated to the north, halfway before you get to Fourth Street, correct? Gated on both ends.
No, there's not a proposal to gate it here. And again, there are a couple of possibilities. One would be if this were to be open to the public all the way through, no gates all along that one roadway, or one would be to allow these residents from each of these communities eventually to get out the other's gate. In other words, have a kind of coordinated effort there on
But
their part.
if one elects to be a public community, or whatever you call it, then the site we're talking about would have to put a gate on their north end, right? That wouldn't.
And I see that coming. That's the nature of my question. I see that coming whenever the parcel to the north comes in for approval.
And, you know, the other thing, there's a red light, I believe, at 4th Street and 58th. There isn't at 5th Street or at First Street Southwest. And people, just like, I know people that live in Village Green, and they may live to the front of the park near Route 60, but they drive all the way through the park over to 26 and come back up because there's a red light and access to get out. And I just think we ought to have more options for traffic to move, and that would be traffic also that would take some of the load off from 58th or any of the main streets that we have, which we're running into right now with traffic concurrency.
Well, we built 58th to take the load.
Yes, exactly.
Why do you want to keep traffic off of it if we built it to take it?
Okay.
Not necessarily
Yeah.
keeping it off from it. It's a matter of giving people other options so they don't have to go out in traffic.
And I understand that, but now it's almost like any gated community that comes along, you're going, you know, heck with your gate. We don't want it to be a gated community.
You got that right.
We want to, well, that's your opinion.
Well, that's why we're all talking about it.
Who are you applauding for? This one or this one?
No. Renee doesn't ever applaud for me.
I want to go back up, if we've hammered this out a little bit, to the waiver for this is a lovely house. I have no qualms with the house. It's very, very pretty. And I like the roof lines and this, that, and the other. I just think it's too large for the lot. 9,300 feet and 10,000. This is a huge house for that property. And I wouldn't be in favor of giving that kind of waiver. It's not proportionate. It'll be all concrete out there.
Any further questions of staff?
May I?
Yes.
I'd like to explain planning and
Madam
zoning's
Chairman, would you
position.
explain yourself?
Donna Keyes, Indian River County Planning and
Go about the
Zoning.
public matters.
Stan was exactly right. What planning and zoning was trying to do was to regulate or restrict the mass and the height. You have a developer who has come in and asked for approval to have smaller lots than a normal subdivision. And in return for smaller lots, the county is to expect something. So we give, we also get. One of the things we're getting is we're getting our 10-foot right-of-way, which we would have gotten anyway. We're getting a left turn lane, which in this instance, if we had not gotten it, then maybe we should actually take a look at our requirements for our left turn lanes again. Normally, this would be a 12,000 square foot lot with a 30% maximum building coverage, which means the house would have been 3,600 square feet. The developer has come in and asked for approval to do a 10,000 square foot lot, but he wants 4,000 square foot homes. So he has a smaller lot with a bigger house. In addition to that request, they are also requesting the approval of a 9,300 square foot lot, which gives you a 3,700 square foot house, which is still larger than what's allowed on a 12,000 square foot lot. And we're getting 1/2 of the side yard setback. So this is where planning and zoning comes in. They look, okay, we've got half the side yard setback. We've got a larger house. What we don't want is the 2-story house, because you've only got 7.5 feet between, or 15 feet between each house. And there's a development on, I think it's 58th, that has a 2-story house in small lot subdivisions, and it has been thought not to be very attractive for our community. So the objective was to restrict the height of the buildings so that we don't have what looks like tall, skinny buildings with only 15 feet apart. Now, I see the fallacy of our way in requesting restriction on 2-story homes. We should have been requesting restriction on the height of the home. So this developer knows that Planning and Zoning has been asking for a restriction of 2-story homes being next to each other on small lots. So he's gone around that by putting in taller homes and calling them 1-story. I can guarantee you that the next time a small lot subdivision comes before Planning and Zoning, we will be looking at this differently than restricting 2-story homes. We're going to be looking at restricting heights. And this is only on homes that are against each other on these small lots with the small side yard setbacks. I look at this as a way to getting around the objective of Planning and Zoning. And I'm a little disappointed in that, but it's your determination whether or not you want to see the what is going to at least look like 2-story homes next to each other on small lots. That's.
Mr. Chairman, if I can ask a question, and maybe of Donna and staff, and Bob maybe can help me. Majestic Oaks out off of 27th, 2-story homes. What size lots are they on?
That was actually a plat over site plan as zone multifamily. So they did a site plan then platted over it. So their lots aren't much bigger than the units in most of the cases. Along there.
I think what I don't have a problem with is, number one, we're looking at a 75-foot lot being their smallest lot. You know as well as I do, Donna, we've had some subdivisions come before us that have been 50-foot lots. 50 foot. That's where I have a problem with 7.5-foot side yard setbacks. I don't have a problem with this house that they're showing in the plan, that whether they call it 2-story or 1-story, because it doesn't change the roof line. I think they have stepped forward and have done a lot of the extras that we haven't asked for. I know one thing that does concern me, which we've changed already, is that in the open space area, we are counting the common space in the stormwater lakes and giving them credit for that. That was before we have gone on and changed those scenarios. I think this is going to be an ongoing battle that we have, true, but I just want to get that out there, Mr. Chairman, that this is the smallest lot they're talking about is a 75-foot lot.
Understood.
Actually, if I could just make a point, the 7.5% green open space is the green area on the plan.
It's not combined with.
It's not combined with the stormwater.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions?
We went through that in TRC.
Sure.
Questions of either staff or I'll consider Donna staff since she's the chairman of the P&Z. Any questions? Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone from the public would like to be heard on this item? No one?
Developer here?
Okay, close the public hearing.
Move staff recommendation plus the bonus room.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded. Under discussion.
I could support this motion if we amended the motion to include what Ms. Keyes stated as far as heights. I think they are trying to move around and circumvent what the intent of planning and zoning was. And also, I want to see interconnectivity for other residents. With those two provisions, I would support this. Without it, I will not.
What height would you suggest?
Yeah.
Maybe they just not be adjacent.
The 2 stories will not be adjacent.
And
But
that
that's-
could,
Saying this is one story.
But they're calling this a one-story house.
Let me hear.
instead of having the taller homes, even though they're being called one-story, instead of having them adjacent to each other, maybe between each home with the bonus room, there be one with a roof line that is lower, so that you don't have the look we have on that development on 58th. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, they got 20%, 20% are going to be 2-story homes, according to this.
Well, see, they're calling these one-story homes.
No, yeah,
But there are
there's only
2-story.
there's only 20% going to be 2 stories. That and then
Bonus room.
And then the other 80% are going to be the same
Bonus
exact height with the bonus room, so you're still going to have this this look of 2-story next to 2-story. And that's what we're trying to
Well, can
get away
we-
from. I don't know if the
on, Bruce.
applicant has any ideas on how
We
to,
institute that at this point to,
yeah, we got a PD.
you know, you get 3 different models now. You're going to try to keep them separate from each other. The 2 can't be close to the bonus room, and the bonus room can't. Yes, sir. Public hearing.
Yeah, Donnie, you didn't mess up my day. I just wanted to point out that that is not the type of house that the P&Z was trying to prevent. The type of house that P&Z was trying to prevent is what Donna was talking about on 58th Avenue, the ones that look like dominoes on 4 sides. Height was not the issue in front of P&Z, and it may have been Donna's opinion, but that was not what was stated by the other P&Z members. It was the square box houses without landscaping right next to each other on small lots. I will tell you that the other thing that, with all due respect, Donna didn't quite get it right. This is not an effort to get around anything because the plans never changed after P&Z, Ms. Keys. We said before at P&Z on the record that these would be exactly what's in Ansley Park, and this is exactly what's in Ansley Park. The same type of houses, the same type of lots, the same type of bonus rooms, and Ansley Park has been referred to over and over again as something that you find attractive that's been successful. So nothing changed after P&Z. It's just that it dawned on my clients, wait, I don't want to make sure they're not counting these bonus rooms that we've had in our plans all along as a second story. That's the only thing that changed. So if you have any questions, Mr. McNamara is here, as is Jeff Barquette, the project engineer, but I just want to make sure that we're all understanding. Nobody's trying to get around anything. Nothing changed after P&Z.
You have this type of home in Ansley Park? Do you?
They do have a bonus room.
I've seen them. I maybe thought it was a 2-story.
What is the lot size?
75.
Yeah, and I also wanted to point out that the 80-foot lots
They're
are
all
actually
75. There's no.
In Ansley.
right.
Okay.
And that would be the trend I see going, more house and less lot. And I think proportion is very good. And
In
this
this
is just
instance-
large house for that.
As I said, I've been to Ansley Park, and I don't find those
No,
disproportionate
no,
at all. In
no.
fact, nobody I've spoken with has. But I also wanted to point out that the 80-foot lots, which are on the perimeter of this, would actually have 12,000 square feet if you counted the 25-foot landscape buffer, which is not included just because of the new regs, and that's fine. But in terms of visual perception, you can't tell the difference between the 80-foot lots and the 12,000 square feet lots.
And I think people are looking for less lawn to mow anyway.
That's in your age group.
I'm looking for less lawn.
No, Wesley's.
Hey,
I don't mean that unkindly. I'm in your group.
I have an acre. Yes, sir. Mr. Christopher.
Good morning. Mrs. Keys wasn't the only one misled. I was misled, too. We talked clearly about 2-story homes and 1-story homes. We weren't talking about boxes. And we were clearly led to believe that there would be a 20% limitation. And nobody explained to us in our meeting what's being said now. So I would have, about the fact that what we were concerned about was a box look. What we were concerned about was a height look.
And what are you saying?
And that there'd be 20% of the houses limited to that kind of a height. Not that the first 1-story would
That's what we have,
Is this-
20%.
Is this height of this bonus room higher or lower than your 2-story height?
Or 4 feet lower than a 2-story. Oh, it's the same height as the regular house.
Okay.
We can't hear you when you're back there, sir. You need to come up, identify yourself, and get on the tape.
I'm Jim McNamara from Showcase Homes. The bonus room wall height is a maximum of 16 feet. A two-story, the two-story homes that were built in Ansley have a 10-foot base ceiling height, 2 feet of floor depth, and 9 feet of second floor height. That's 21 feet of wall height for a two-story as opposed to 16 for the bonus room.
Not counting
About the gable.
Not
The
counting the
roof line.
roof.
The roof,
On both of them.
the peak of the roof of the dormer isn't any higher than the roof height of the main house.
That doesn't answer where I'm coming from, though. You're talking about 21 feet of wall height.
Right.
On top of that, you're going to put a gable or roof. Now, where's the roof line? What height is the roof line on the one-story house versus the roof line on the two-story house?
Well, if that house is built as a one-story also, the bonus room is an option. So you see a bunch of those houses in Ansley without the dormer in the front.
So
The
the roof
overall
line-
roof height is
The roof line
probably-
doesn't change.
No,
correct?
the overall roof height in the main house doesn't change, and it probably is 28 feet high, something like that.
What's the roof line on the two-story house?
Well, it would be 21 feet plus the mass of the roof, which could go up another
38 feet,
12.
40 feet.
Do you have a picture of this a two-story home?
I don't, no, I don't.
All right. Any questions? Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the audience like to be heard on this item? If not, I'll close the public hearing. What is your pleasure, gentlemen?
That already was. We have a motion already.
We do have a motion on the floor, and Commissioner Wheeler gave his reasons.
I would,
We could call a question, please.
we're not going to finish the discussion? Are you running this or Art?
I just called
Be
for a
nice,
question.
children.
Mr. Chairman, may we call the question?
Yes, read the motion, please.
Staff recommendation with the bonus room.
Okay, everyone understand the motion?
And,
All
yeah,
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
opposed.
Do I hear a 3-2?
Yes.
You opposed? Opposed. 3-2. Next item, it's at 9B, public discussion items. There are none. Public, excuse me, public notice items, things that are coming up next week. Notice of scheduled public hearing January 17, 2006. Amendments to Animal Control Ordinance for public hearing on January 17, 2006, and accompanying resolution updating fees. Memo dated January 3, 2006. County Administrator's matters, there are none. Departmental matters, there's no community development, no emergency services. General services, second progress report, new county administration buildings. We have a live report. Steve?
Good morning. I'm Steve Bloom, project manager for the county administration building. Just want to briefly cover where we are. The project continues to move well. We're working well with Turner Construction and good communications. We're doing a lot of the dirty stuff right now, which doesn't really show, but a lot of underground work, the plumbing, underground work prior to pouring slabs, things like that on Building 2. Building 2, incidentally, is moving ahead of Building A per the schedule because we just needed to phase the work that way. Now, we've got on Building B, the administrative annex, I guess you'd call it. We've got columns poured. Most of the columns poured. We're now working on the exterior columns, and the stem walls around the outside are done. So we're moving very fast toward something you could see on the site. We're also working Building A at the same time, but in addition to that, we're moving forward now with the west end of the site, the actual new parking, and the intent is to get that finished and usable by around the end of January so that we can relax some of the use of the, for lack of a better term, the mulch parking lot and begin using that. That was a move by Turner so that we could get that going, and we'll be cutting a access from that parking lot into the health department lot, and we're going to do some juggling around the base of the bridge access, and then we'll be opening 27th Street over to that access. It's kind of hard to explain without a drawing, but it's working, and everything's seems to be going well. We've been doing a lot of work with the utilities people, Vero Beach Power, Bell South, and Comcast, to name a few, plus our own internal fiber network. And there's a lot to think about in terms of the underground aspects of this work, coordination and so forth. Vero Beach Power is currently installing the what I call the east feed to the complex, which initially will only serve, eventually it'll serve Building B, but initially it's coming across the canal and it's serving their lift station, which happens to be located on our site, and that is well along now. And in fact, they had some planned outages over the weekend that allowed them to move ahead with that, and the goal, of course, is to keep, number one, the lift station operating, and number two, keep the health department powered up. So, and they're not in any particular order of preference, that's for sure. We're moving along on the cost savings items and on the direct purchases. You can see in the agenda item we're up to about $1.4 million on direct purchases, and that'll continue to rise somewhat. And the result of that will be tax savings of 6% plus for each one, and then when that purchase is made, or the purchase order is made, then we can reduce the GMP. Now that's not a reduction in the project price, because the only savings in that regard is the tax savings. So that is money spent in a different way out of the contract money. So we're working, we're doing very well. We've got, wait a minute.
Oh, jeez.
Sorry. Anyway, the schedule looks pretty good right now. As with any site, we've got a few issues with underground utilities and so forth, but we expected that, and we're working those out. So you'll be seeing some requests for some change orders to adjust the GMP and to fill in to add to the owner's contingency. And so overall, we're doing very well, and we would ask that your approval to authorize the county administrator to sign the necessary change orders for these adjustments as indicated in our recommendation. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah,
I have one, and I don't know if it's directly related to this or not, and I know, Joe, this is probably more towards you than Steve. In the past, we have talked about the possibility of looking at closing 26th Street and opening 27th Street for a direct line on US 1. Where do we stand with the Florida East Coast Railroad and FDOT, or have we even looked at it?
I don't have any input on that.
Working on that. He works on the on closing 26, looking at the possibility of closing 26 and opening 27.
Have we made any contact with either government entities?
27th in the city street that used to serve the city public works compound. My understanding is that will come into the county parking lot, and it'll be a circuitous route through the parking lot. It will not be a thoroughfare link.
No, you're on the other end. I'm on the end towards railroad tracks.
same thing.
Okay.
US 1.
Some years ago, 27th used to be the railroad crossing, and some of the large citrus trucks would get hung up on that crossing due to the grade change between US 1 and the railroad. It was moved down to 26th Street, and some elevation work was done to raise US 1 coming off the railroad bridge over the main canal. And that grade situation is much better than is possible at 27th Street. So it's my opinion, and I think city staff concurs, that it would be very difficult to move that back to 27th Street due to the elevation change between the railroad and US 1.
I thought we had a joint meeting with the City of Vero Beach, and they made the comment they would like to see 26 closed down and 27th moved. If we're building a $30 million building, why don't we have a direct line to it off of US 1?
Due to that elevation change between the railroad track and US 1.
I disagree.
We can look in that, but it wouldn't be proper protocol for the county to do that. It would be protocol for the city to do that because they're both city
That's
streets.
what I'm asking, Jim. I'm asking if we've started that process because we have a building that's in the process of being built. And there again, like building roads, why are you going to wait till we need it? Let's look into seeing if that's feasibility.
I'll contact the city engineer and see if he's made that contact.
Just to kind of, to go along with that, if you think of the worst intersection in Indian River County, it's 58th and 60. If you think of the longest red light in Indian River County, it's 26th and US 1. So,
do I get a clap from Renee on this one, maybe?
So, and
do I get a clap
simply
okay
on
this
that.
one?
Well, see, I'm getting applause for Tom.
Talk about pandering.
No, but in reality, the problem and I don't know whether the problem is necessarily where it comes out on 26 as much as it is, I think, St. Lucie Avenue. Something should be able to be improved there, and if it is moving that north to the direct line, I would certainly like to see something done with that intersection because it's the longest intersection in the Indian River County if you're at one of those lights.
Well,
I've already talked to the engineering department about doing away with the traffic stop signal on St. Lucie Avenue in exchange for just a blinker light, but they say it's not feasible. I think that would resolve the problem.
Before we give any direction to staff to contact the city and look at this, I'd like to see a whole thing brought back to this commission so we can look at it and see if it is something that we want to encourage the city to look at. I'd like to see a pictorial. I'd like to see the outlay of our new building where the access and egress is.
Yeah, we can do that.
And what's going to happen. I'd like to see the picture here before we send word to the city that we'd like them to address this.
And Commissioner Wheeler, I appreciate that. If we can go back to the joint meeting that we had with the City of Vero Beach, I know I explicitly brought this up, and I believe they were in agreement with this. So, and that's all. That's the only reason I'm bringing it back forward, because it's just kind of gotten shoved under the rug. And I think if we're building this building, let's continue to look at bettering our intersections.
I'm simply asking for it to come back here so we can look at it.
And I'd like to start.
If I might interject one thing, and that is that I did not mention the bridge, and the bridge is very near completion for use as a construction access. Ultimately, it will allow access to the site from Aviation Boulevard, but that would be at least some impact on the issues that you're talking about.
When will the bridge be open to the public?
When the building's complete.
How long? Okay.
Because it's unsafe until that point.
And what does completion date look like for the whole project?
Still January 07, February 07.
Okay.
I'd like to request that that we have staff bring let's take an in-depth look at it in one of our meetings.
Okay.
The whole picture.
Yep.
Yeah. We need to, would like to see a pictorial showing the access from 27th, how that would work. But that 27th is not going to drive straight through that complex, right? It's going to
No. It'll drive through the complex, but then it comes up to Aviation Boulevard.
And it wouldn't be any good for a thoroughfare through to McAnch Park.
Not at this time, no. It's not an east-west
That may be a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions of our engineer, our architect? All right. Do we need a motion on
Yes, we've asked for a...
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
moving and seconded? Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Can I make a point? For a humble taxpayer.
Are you humble?
Very humble.
All right, as long as you're humble. Yes, sir.
Very short, very sweet.
Very sweet.
Yes. R.J. Martin, 859 Island Club Square, Wabasso Beach, Orchid Island. Just giving you a progressive view of the administration complex with one milestone. Building number 2 is supposed to be having stairs and its roof installed at this point in time. All right? This is Turner's schedule.
It's supposed to have stairs and roof?
Yes, sir. Building 2.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Davis made this available to me back in August, and I've been tracking it ever since. The bridge that we talk about for construction should have been finished, on the 1st of June last year. With that, gentlemen, I have to depart.
Thank you.
Sounds like for government, we're right on schedule.
All right, moving on down to item 11I, Public Works. Approval of work order number 1, engineering with A&M, Engineering and Testing, Inc., providing professional geotechnical services in accordance with the annual geotechnical services contract number 0534 for 41st Street roadway improvements, project number 0016 and 0236.
Move approval.
Second, third.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. 11I2, Public Works. Continued bid award for Inver County bid number 2006041, project number 9705B, Oslo Road, County Road 606, lateral J, canal bridge replacement.
Move
Staff
approval.
recommendation.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman, for discussion.
Been moved and discussion?
Yeah. Well, this was the one that we bid out, and we only had one bid on, came back $3 million and change, and we rejected that bid and saved ourselves $1 million. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. County Attorney has nothing. Commissioner items, myself. One thing I'd like to say about commissioner items, without having to go through the formality of putting any particular items under your items, I would encourage you to report back on things that we may not otherwise be aware of, committee reports, things like that, if you wish. What I have for you this time is similar to that. The letter from, I called, at your direction, I called Commissioner Bronson, Agricultural Commissioner, about the citrus canker meeting, and his answer by phone was, you all have this document? You'd like me to read it, or no? And he said he'll be meeting with the USDA, and as soon as he meets with them, he'll be back to us and meet with us in St. Lucie County. He should be calling me. His meeting was supposed to be on January 9th, so I would anticipate a call.
Good work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wheel, do you have anything?
No.
Commissioner Bowden?
No?
Commissioner Wesley Davis?
No, sir.
Tommy Lowther has a Florida Ridge house, wants to show us his summer place, I think.
I do, Commissioner Newberger, as I've, and this has landed in my district, which doesn't mean anything. I think, and truly you all have seen the pictures, hopefully you all have had the opportunity of going out to the site to see it. And Kim or Stan or Bob, if you're sitting there, if you can show these pictures that I received this morning, and truly, there's nothing wrong with what I guess the company's trying to do, but we've run into a situation now where I think it's been brought up that this is a historical house, and this is the building now that has the roof on it. Now, what you've got to understand is there's a house maybe 10 foot on the other side of this, and at this point in time, I don't know. And maybe Mrs. Stanbridge can help me. If it's on a historical registry, does that stay with the house roof? So that okay, and that answered my question there. The problem I have with this right now, and I wish each and every one of y'all would go to the site to look at it. I think it's become more of a health hazard than it has a home being moved to be remodeled, and I understand that they have 6 months to bring this up to code. Between you and I don't see how that's going to happen. Here's another view of the roof being put on, which is the original roof. Now, mind you, you have neighbors around this structure, and I think the only reason I'm bringing it forward to you today is there's got to be some means of us either having them put a fence up around this establishment to where people or kids or what have you can't get on this site. And at that point in time, would like to bring the performance bond that we did away with back and institute that, because I think we made a mistake on this one.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I agree with the performance bond issue coming back, and I did vote for the ordinance, but that was only because I was clearly on the minority whenever it was brought up. In the event that this company, and I'm not saying that they will, but in the event that this company doesn't do anything other than this, we no longer have a mechanism in place other than fines and liening the property, unlike the performance bond that we had prior to us changing that ordinance. And I hope this gets better. for the residents. I really do. I certainly understand exactly what you're going through. But I would like to see us revisit that ordinance to reinstitute the performance bond so that we have a little bit more of a security, a secure position moving forward with houses like this in the future.
Well, I somewhat agree, but what is the owner doing with it? Is he working on it at all? I mean, he has 6 months, which is...
It's 12 months.
12 months.
12 months.
Well,
So that runs us right into hurricane season.
That might be a little bit too long in this, so we need to revisit that, but...
I'm Bob Keating. I'm County Community Development Director. We do have the owners here, and I think maybe it's best if they address your questions and tell you the time frame and what they're...
That's a good idea.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We do have a
Sir, may we please have your name and address for the records?
Robert Hanmer, 915 58th Avenue.
And Scott Dillard, 16-46th Avenue.
It's not the best architectural rendering I could put together. Now, gentlemen, in the beginning, we started this project for affordable housing. It was something different than everybody else is doing. House was built in 1917. It housed the first, before they built the Catholic Church, they had meetings in this house, you might say. It means the house has been blessed.
It's cursed now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. From the beginning, the move went real smooth that evening. I thought that was the hardest part, getting the house moved down the street. And the permit we got is not just a moving permit. It's, you might as well call it a building permit. It allows us to do what we have to do. We got held back a little bit by the neighbors. The very next day we were trying to jockey the home in, and they kind of wouldn't let us go across the easement, held us up. Then we needed some cranes, and they were all down south taking care of the hurricane. So different variables have held us up. We think we can have this thing brought to CO within 2 months. We're not going to take a year. We changed our plans. This thing originally was going to be up on telephone poles, 9 foot high. We changed our foundation to make everybody happy. Once we get it all put together and painted and nice, you'll have a nice dwelling.
How long has it been on site?
It's November 15th.
November 15th.
And what have you done since November 15th?
We have, the major part was moving the roof, and we had to submit.
When we moved the building, we had to take the roof off, down. So we took half of it and laid it down on top of the building and took the other half off. So then when we were delayed in getting the second half of the roof back on, and then when we did get the other half of the roof we moved, they wouldn't move it with that permit that you gave us unless we chopped it into 3 parts. So that created a whole different arena, because otherwise that roof would not be in 3 parts up there right now. So we have repositioned the roof in order to firm it up and close it in. We have the foundation was crumbling. There was one floor joist that was rotting out in front, and so it collapsed after a bit of time, and so the floor joists were all falling apart in the middle. But we've raised it all back and squared it up, and have that back in and we're repairing that work right now. So we have the foundation is the next thing that we are going to address. Once the foundation is in, then we can go get the septic put in, and we can get the electricians in and the plumbing in, and it'll be back into the marketplace. I know this looks like a horrendous amount of work. It is, gentlemen, and basically we're doing it on a shoestring budget. We're trying to create a scenario that we can redo in the future to provide housing for under $200,000, and that's our goal. And that's why you guys gave us a chance with this bond issue. And I think it's a godsend. In the long haul, it'll pay off. In the short haul, if you'd like us to throw a fence up around it, we'd be happy to. We don't want to disturb the neighbors. We don't want them upset with us. We're very upset that they're upset, and we hope that we can change these things. You know, we had an altercation the day that we moved down there, and, you know, there was some fists thrown, and it was pretty wild. But all I wanted to do was get this position so that we didn't bleed a ton of money. And as you all know, every day that goes by, that's money out the window. So you know, we'd like to get this CO'd ASAP, but we're working within our means.
Okay, your schedule now is 60 days? Just going to be finished in 60 days?
Well, you know, we're not going to swear. We have till the end till 12 months. We'd like to get it done in 60 days, all right? Okay. And we have a certain amount of funds to take care of the goals that we have to now.
I think a fence would be a good start.
We'll do that immediately. And then...
Also, we went back to our engineer, got a new set of foundation plans, which is just a stem wall with a couple of concrete blocks high, so you're only going to be 3 or 4 feet off the ground.
Good.
And that's in with Rinker right now. So this week we were planning on getting the foundation in there. That way we can get it off the cribbing. That'll make it look a lot better. Yeah. Put a fence up. And
then we'll get that roof closed in. I got it squared off over the weekend so that it's not all wavy and looking like a piece of trash. I mean, we take honor in what we do. And, you know, we take pride in our craftsmanship. It's not like you have anybody else coming out here and trying to create a solution for the workforce, do you?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I think one thing that I want to implore our building department in doing and the inspectors is to stay on top of this establishment. Because I can tell you right now, and I'm not an engineer and I'm not a builder, that's not going to go to code. If you look at that building, guys, well, I commend you for what you're doing.
No, Tom, Mr. Lowther, there's this rule from the these are the instructions on how to move a building in our county, okay? And so we start out asking you all, how do we do this in a successful, orderly fashion?
And we made a mistake.
No, well, look, you may not have made a mistake.
You didn't make.
I can tell you on
well,
my,
I know that's your
on my
opinion.
inclination, it's coming back to institute performance bond. You all did get away with it.
Well, but now let me just...
Let me ask you this. If you had to put up the bond, could you have done this?
Yes, sir. We would have still done it, and even if...
Then why did you come before us to change it?
Because it's a stress. It's when you're working on a shoestring, it's a stress.
And the house is a shoestring, unfortunately. I hate to say that.
Well, I understand that's your position, and you're entitled to that, but it's a very beautiful old home.
I don't think you should be...
I agree.
I don't think you should be trying to throw the blame to them for something we did.
Well,
they asked, we approved it.
It's our fault.
But
That's
Mr.
what I'm
Lowther,
saying. All we need to do is stay on top of
If I may, the rules go that the building or structure is structurally sound and in occupiable condition for its intended use prior to moving. We proved that it was. We had an architect say and give us a letter to that effect. That was in the approval for the permit. Now, the occupancy use classification for the building or structure is not changed, and it won't change. Now, the building is not substantially remodeled. It won't be substantially remodeled. Okay, the point I'd like to get to is that when you have a residence that's being moved like this, Mr. Lowther, you don't have to bring everything up to code. It's called the 50% rule. And that's why we undertook this mission, because we had this 50% rule limiting us from all of the crazy expenses that come when you have to bring everything up to code.
And I understand that. Would you have moved this house next to your house right now, where you live today?
Yeah.
I'm proud of you. That's really good. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I think we need to give these gentlemen a chance. It's there. We're kind of stuck with it as it is now, but I'm really hoping that you get something done.
Well, we certainly shall.
And we have a lot of people in the audience that are very disturbed, and I wouldn't want it near my house, by the way. But anyway, hopefully the people will be patient, and they say 60 days, and we have our building department working on it. Mr. Aiken, do you have anything to say about it? No. Mrs. Stanbridge, our county historian, did something come up that it's a historical house? Would you like to tell us a little bit about its history, maybe?
Ruth Stanbridge, 4835 66th Avenue, and I serve at the pleasure of the commissioners as county historian. I take the job very seriously, and it bothers me a little bit that this was considered a historical house, even though it was moved and it is being remodeled, not restored. The way you deal with historical homes, you leave them on site and you restore them. The history stays with the area they're in. Also, this is not on the National Register. It was inventoried by the city of Vero Beach in 1990. That inventory went to the state of Florida, which put it on the Florida Master Site file, but that's only an inventory. It's not saying that it's National Register. There's a long ways between that inventory and the listing on the National Register. Okay. And I have items here, if you need them, that will prove that.
What was the physical address of this house before? I have a hard time placing it.
According to the inventory, it was at 1948 22nd Avenue.
1940.
And according to the master site file, it was 1948.
Okay.
And again, it bothers me a little bit that you may have before you a legitimate move of a historical building. When you move a building, it loses some significance. When it's remodeled, it's compromised totally, so that you end up with having old wood instead of an old building.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Ruth. Yes, sir.
The idea that this county used to be St. Lucie County, and that this St. Lucie County began taking inventory or making records of the homes built in the county is a historical issue. Don't we agree?
No.
No?
You don't?
Don't.
Well, if you have a county that starts making records of the buildings that it keeps, the very first building on that record is a starting point for a whole culmination of events.
But the building is not there at this present time on that site.
Did you see the homework we did?
Is there any relevancy to this?
Yes. No, this has nothing to do
We're getting
with
a little
anything.
afield. I just wanted to get your opinion on whether...
It's historical now, so...
Once it was moved from the site, it lost its
okay.
integrity.
It's making history now.
Yeah.
It is.
It's just an old house.
Hysterical history.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
My only comment is, like I said, get it done, would you guys, please?
Yes,
Thank you,
please.
sir. And we'll get the fence up right away.
And I'll ask the neighbors to be patient and keep us apprised, and we've all been down there to take a look at. Yes, would you like to make a comment? You need to come up here because we can't hear you from there. Where you going?
My name is Merle Mowry. I live right directly north of that home, and I bought my place in 1999. And at that particular time, the attorneys and the realtor that I bought my place off of told me that lot north of or south of me was vacant, in which I realized it looked like a jungle. But they told me at the time it was useless. It was not big enough to do anything with. Now, what my question is, how can something be done with that today? And it couldn't be back in 1999.
Well, I don't know who
The lot was not big enough to do anything with, could not build on it, could not do anything with it.
How big is the lot?
65 by 100.
I don't know who told you that it was not buildable.
Well, the attorney and the realtor that I bought my place off of. Now is there a restriction on square footage for a septic system? And if there is, does this meet the code?
The only restriction that I'm aware of is a septic and well setback up 75 feet from each other.
Now, they do have water. We do have water down there at this particular time.
That allows
But
you to build.
there is one other question I'd like to say. One comment. I just want to make a comment. This gentleman started to build something quite a while back in there, and all it set was wood over there and just rotted. I mean, it sat there. He was going to build something, I don't know how many stories high, so he looked at the water or something. And this sat over there, and which when I was looking at the time, it degraded my property. And right now, this property, this house that he's put over there, is degrading my property today. It's lowering my property value. If I wanted to sell my place, I couldn't get nothing out of it hardly. Now, like you guys said, would you want it beside your house? No. I don't think so. But if these guys can do something with it, if he can do something with it, fine. But I don't want to see something done the way he done before, when I just set a floor over there, and it set for how many years did it set?
This came before the zoning commission in December of '04, and it was just a shed on a sled. According to codes, if you have a building that has a canvas roof, it's allowable. Now, it didn't ever get to that phase, and all that was there was a 12 by 18 foot floor joists on two sleds.
This was in '04?
This was in '04, yeah, December of '04, and then.
What's that got to do with this?
Well, he's upset.
I'm just bringing up the question. If he don't do anything more to this house than he did with this other thing that he started to build, it'll never get done.
Yeah. Well,
so then when this happens, what's going to happen here? Yeah. What's going to happen if he does not get this completed in 1 year to code? What's going to happen? Is it going to sit there and just rot away, or what?
Well,
I mean, what can you guys do? I mean, in all the time, my property price is going down.
We can, I mean, if they don't follow code, it goes before the code enforcement board, and then we have the authority to eventually demolish the structure if nothing happens and move it out of there and lien the property, and it doesn't cost you anything.
Okay, I just had to vent my little frustration.
That's all right.
Because it's beside my property, and it looks like heck, as you guys can see in the pictures.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if it can be fixed, that's up to him. But I couldn't see nothing that happened before, so I don't see nothing happening today.
We have a vision.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
So did you start to build a house here on this?
So in the beginning, yes, sir, we did. We had a blueprint to build a house before the hurricanes hit, and it blew the roof off the engineer, and we lost our blueprints. But once upon a time, we were setting up camp to build a house. Then we decided to move this house. Is what happened.
All right. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kathy Thomas. I live at 2109 Southeast 2nd Avenue in the Florida Ridge subdivision. And might I change this picture?
Yes, you may.
Back to that one. That's a good one. I don't know what to do with that. Okay. I've lived at this address since 1968. It's an old neighborhood built in the late 50s, early 60s, before deed restrictions and homeowners associations. It's a nice neighborhood where you know who lives next door and your kids have all grown up together. That's why my neighbors and I are here today, and we're all in that section. Mm-hmm. On November 18th, 2005, in the wee hours of the morning, a house was delivered to a recently cleared lot. I use the word house very loosely, as you can see. Shack is more like it. We would like to know how this shack passed the necessary inspections and procedures to obtain the permitting it needed to be moved. On the weekend of December 3rd, 2005, my neighbor Barbara Stumberg and I walked a petition up and down our streets and gathered 69 signatures of residents, property owners, friends, and family of the immediate area. Some of them are here today. On December 5th, 25 of us presented Tom Lowther with our petition and pictures at his monthly neighborhood meeting at the Vero Beach Highlands Rec Center. He seemed very concerned and surprised. I had contacted the Press Journal, and Henry Stevens, a staff reporter, came to this meeting. Henry told me that an article had appeared in the Press Journal on October 6th, 2005 about this house. Unfortunately, I have met no one that saw the original article. I obtained a copy of the news article from Louise Philippine at the news department of the Press Journal. After hearing our story, she assured me there would be a follow-up story. We're still waiting for that one. My neighbor Ann Rhymes and I purchased a copy of the October 4th Board of County Commissioners meeting. At this meeting, Mr. Scott Dillon and Mr. Robert Hamner came before you, the commissioners, with a story of a 1925 historic home of sound structure. To quote Mr. Hamner,
craftsmanship like you would not believe. They had their permits, but needed your permission to waive the $22,000 performance bond so they could get the final permit to move the old house to Florida Ridge. They told you they needed this money to move the house, and it's cost them approximately $20,000 to move it. My neighbors and I have spoken with a number of county officials, from code enforcement to the building department. Some were very rude, some were very helpful. I don't need to name names because they know who they were. It wasn't until we approached Tom Lowther that we had hope for our dilemma. On Friday, December 30th, 2005, I delivered each of you commissioners a packet containing copies of letters I had written to Tom Lowther and also to Mr. Bob Keating. As to the performance bond issue, we are asking each of you to vote to put it back in the record books. It is not an obsolete idea. It is the only insurance that the county has to fall back on in the event an owner doesn't do what he says he will do. As to the permitting issue, we would like to know how and why this house was able to slip through the cracks, so to speak. Doesn't someone visually inspect these properties, especially with a house as old as this one? We wonder if someone didn't do their job and now it has caught up with them. In our quest for answers, we have talked with various county employees. We go armed with pictures of the house. The house no one at the county administration building has ever seen. The historic side of the house is another issue. The permits were all pulled for a 1948 22nd Avenue address. The county tax roll says no results found. The tax roll for the 1940 22nd Avenue address will show you a picture of this house in its better days. No permits have been pulled for that address. According to the Press Journal, the address is 1935 22nd Avenue. That house isn't half bad, but it's still on 22nd Avenue. According to Ruth Stanbridge, the county historian, who is here today to answer any questions you may have, the 1948 22nd Avenue address was listed on the city inventory of 1990 and in the 91 master site file. No mention is made of the 1940 22nd Avenue address. Just being mentioned in the inventory meant the house was there and it was at least 50 years old. It does not mean that the house met all the requirements to be put on the National Registry. According to John Slitt, the house did belong to Lewis Slitt, a county pioneer. He may have held church meetings there, but the house doesn't appear to be the first Catholic church in Vero Beach. St. Helens, on the opposite side of Road 60, holds that title. It was built in 1919. According to the county tax roll, this house was built in 1925. According to the building department archives, there were two houses originally, a 1940 and a 1948. We could not find out when the 1948 house disappeared. The historic paperwork the county has, the date has been changed to 1917. I don't know if you have a copy of that, but I also have copies here if you need one. This is what they apparently showed your county that they were using to prove this house was old. The master site file does not show 1925 crossed out and 1917 printed. Irregardless, the problem is here, and it needs to be addressed. We, the residents of Florida Ridge, are asking you for a stop work order until it can be resolved. But I see this morning we have a red flag out there, and it has been stopped. Either the county accepts responsibility or the owners should be made to properly dispose of the house. We have all ages of children in our neighborhood, and children are naturally curious. This house is definitely unsafe. It could probably be considered a public nuisance. If Mr. Dillon and Mr. Hamner are allowed to continue with their project, we as a neighborhood feel the property should be fenced and the owner should show the county proof of liability insurance since the building is not properly secured to a foundation. On behalf of my neighborhood, I'm asking for you, the Board of County Commissioners, to help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Very good presentation. Gentlemen, did you hear your marching orders?
Well, I'd like to have Bob, she asked a question twice during her presentation about how this happened. Bob, could you give us a rundown, the history?
Don't understand.
Yes,
How was this allowed?
Well, he had all the instructions about how to move a house. That's how it happened.
Right. I'll have Buddy Aikens, Chief Building Official, address that part.
Questions?
Yeah, Mrs. Thomas asked how this was allowed to happen, and the Commission has to accept a great deal of responsibility for that, but I would like, can you give us the history of how this happened? One other thing I might say that, at least in my mind, the fact that this house was or was not historical didn't mean anything to me. It was just an old house they wanted to move, and they came in here kind of with hat in hand looking for some relief to move that. We listened to them. We thought that this would be a good idea at the time. Apparently it may not have been such a good idea, but at any rate, in my opinion, the responsibility for this error rests solely with the County Commission.
Buddy, I think the question is, was it structurally sound to be moved?
It was documented as structurally sound.
By their engineer.
By their engineer.
We don't go out and inspect them to verify
Right.
or anything, do we? No.
And having seen it, you know, the structure is sound. It's not sound today because it's in the process of being put back together.
Right.
When you take a structure and cut it into pieces, it's not going to be as sound as it was all together. You got to give them an opportunity to put it back together. And is it unsafe? Is any building site unsafe?
Yeah.
Yes, our building site across the road out here is unsafe, and people should stay away from them. And yeah, you've got kids in neighborhoods. You've got kids in every neighborhood we're building in the county. Do we make them put fences around every house? No. Is it an unsafe situation? Yes, they ought to keep their kids away from it.
Well, I think they agreed to put up a fence, right?
Well,
So that'll resolve part of the problem about kids getting in there.
In the neighborhood, sure.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Did I see another hand? Yes, ma'am? You make him down. Thank you, Mr. Akins.
Yes, sir. My name is Elizabeth Rhymes, and I live at 2174 First Avenue Southeast. And I come before you today wanting some answers. First of all, at the last meeting that we attended here, we were told that he could not remove asbestos shingles without a licensed asbestos contractor. Saturday afternoon, he was removing the asbestos shingles, putting them in a trailer. Now, my question is it at the dump now?
Ma'am, they are piled up at the back of the lot on the right-hand side. I did not put them in the trailer. All that went in the trailer was the lumber.
Okay, the building inspector told us that he does have to have a licensed contractor to remove these. Why is he removing them?
Commissioners.
Wouldn't you come to the mic again, would you please?
It's been determined in consultation with state authorities that the federal law and the state law exempt single-family dwellings from the asbestos abatement requirements in total.
Thank you.
So we were misinformed then.
No, you were not misinformed.
But, you know, I've got to also state, as a county resident of Indian River County since 1958, I am very embarrassed that we have county officials that are employed by the people of Indian River County that are very obnoxious and rude. Now, we are not contractors. We are just tax-paying people. But let me tell you something. When a person asks, they should get a decent answer and not be treated as if they are stupid. And on occasion, in this building department of Indian River County, we have been treated very badly. Now, I don't know, I think Mr. Baird is responsible for the building department, if I'm not correct.
Yes, ma'am.
I think you need to inform your people that they work for the people of Indian River County.
You know, I want to apologize if you were improperly treated, and we'll try and work on improving that. And that's all I can say. We try and treat the public with respect. I've been out to the site twice to visit myself personally, once with Commissioner Lowther. And we are concerned and we are trying to help. So is the building department.
Okay.
The building department, however, we go by a code that's set up by the state, and we can't, we can't waiver from that.
Okay,
I understand. We want you to. We're concerned about the house. I've been out there. A lot of our staff's been out. We've sent several inspectors out over and over again with the complaints, and we are trying to resolve it.
And I appreciate that,
yes.
sir. But also, one other question I have is, just a moment ago, this gentleman said that he, if I understood him correctly, that he really didn't have to bring this house up to code, because if he did, it was because of some kind of 50%. Well, I don't understand all that.
Ma'am,
but if he does not have to bring it up to code, I want you to tell me that today. Does he or does he not have to bring it up to code?
He doesn't have to meet the new code that just recently went into effect. And those are requirements such as the 140-mile-per-hour wind speed for windows, and having shutters or impact-resistant glass, and criteria like that.
Why not?
Because of the 50%.
The building code under which this house is permitted, the 2001 Florida Building Code, calls for this house to be rebuilt to the code under which it was originally built. Codes in the county started in '63, so we would say the 1963 code is the extant code.
And the reason, before everybody gets upset, I think a little more explanation. The reason for that is, and Buddy, you may want to address it, or Bob rather than me, but my understanding, the reason for the 50%, just like we have a hurricane, and your house is less than 50% destroyed, you can build your house back to the code it was built under. We have a hurricane and your house is more than 50% destroyed, you're going to have to bring your house up to code, which is considerably more expensive to bring to 140-mile-an-hour winds and glass and all the things that occurred with the new rules. So this 50% rule basically is here to help individuals that don't have brand new homes if you have to fix what's destroyed in a storm or a fire or anything else. So it's an advantage to the general public, cost-wise.
Well, it may be an advantage, but this house is definitely 50% less what it was in its day and time.
That could be.
I disagree with that ruling, but that's neither here nor there. But I still say that there was a mistake made. I'm sorry. I'm not blaming anybody. There's probably enough blame to go around. But I'm not really blaming anyone, but I think that the mistake needs to be corrected, because you would not want that house in your neighborhood, and he can sit there and tell me he's going to bring it up to code, but he's not going to bring it up to anything for $39,000. I couldn't put a room on my house for $39,000.
Do we have any legal?
For what he's going to spend, or so he says he's going to spend for this house, it will not look like anything. And then he's got it sitting on these concrete blocks in that sand. When he pulls those crib things out from underneath it, does he really think that thing's just going to stand there with no concrete? He doesn't have to have any kind of footing, any kind of...
Ms. Rhymes, he's got to build a proper footing with a stem wall. He already told us that.
Ms. Rhymes,
and
these are the blueprints for the redesigned footers, or the foundation. We were going to put it up...
Is he just going to sit there on those concrete...
No, those will be gone soon. Those will be gone hopefully next week. We're going to be on this for the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so how long does he have?
He has a year from when he got his permit, but he said he's going to be done in 60 days.
Chairman, if I may. Just for Ms. Rhymes, Ms. Thomas, you clearly have the attention of the commission. This situation does. It has the attention of the county staff as well as the developers that are putting this project together. As far as it's dragging out for a year, they may legally be able to, but comfortably they will not be able to.
Okay. I appreciate your help.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
Thank you.
I hope you understand our concern.
Absolutely.
You know,
It's a good
just
lesson.
very-
It's a good lesson to us too.
Very
so.
degrading is what it is to feel like that in your county you could have this happen to you.
Yes, ma'am.
It's very degrading because I'm very proud of my home.
Sure.
You know, it's not a, you know, we're not a real wealthy neighborhood that's got gated communities. But, you know, we're proud of our homes. And to have this happen to you, it's very insulting. It really is. And to think that this was done just to, you know, for low-cost housing, I'm sorry.
Well,
Thank you. Let's not debate anymore. We've had enough debate, and I think briefly, yes, ma'am. I think everything's been said that needs to be said.
It probably has, but I do have a couple of questions. First off,
Gentlemen, we have some questions you might have to answer.
all right. See how good I am at putting them on here. Kind of hard when you're working upside down. This is a picture of the trailer that was in front of the house that he put the asbestos shingles in.
Okay.
Now, the trailer was not on the premises early Sunday morning, so I can only assume that he took it with him when he left. You can see from under the tarp that they
Right.
were the shingles. And he was witnessed by several of my neighbors and myself putting them in there.
Excuse me, that is totally wrong. The fact is that that trailer has not made it to the dump yet and currently has
Good to know.
the amount of material that was installed at that time. As I described earlier, I took all those shingles and put them in the back of the lot, and you're free to go back there and take a look.
No,
Really,
you're gonna have a fence
I'm
around
sorry
it.
that
They
you're
can't.
upset. We certainly don't want you to be upset, and we're really aiming to rectify this problem and make it nice.
Also, I have a question for Buddy Akins. On the December 6th tape of the county commission meeting where some of my neighbors came, my husband was here, I was not, you said that there is a code, 469.003, which deals with the asbestos issue. And it says, let's see, to quote you, building code talks about the enforcing agency has to make sure that the contractor complies with 469.003, which has to do with using a licensed asbestos contractor when dealing with the asbestos. It has to be disposed of properly, or you have to have it encapsulated by a licensed asbestos contractor. Now, you did not mention anything about a homeowner being able to do it himself. And also, these are not homeowners. They are a business that is going to rebuild this house and either rent it or resell it. And they are doing this work. They are not licensed contractors. There has been, to my knowledge, no licensed contractors on the premises. They have been working an hour here, 2 hours here, and that's all they've done. This is what we have. This main picture is what we have since November 18th when it was moved. Now, that's almost 2 months.
Ma'am, if you'll recall, there was no roof.
That's true. You did put the roof on.
Thank you.
Yeah, you did put the roof on. We were all ecstatic over that.
Well, thank you. I wonder if we could wrap this up.
regardless-
We beat this to death already. We understand,
Well, I
as
mean,
Wesley
we
said,
just
you
want to
have our
know that it's
attention.
going to be addressed, that it's
Okay,
not
thank you.
going to be forgotten.
No, it's not going to be forgotten.
I
With the
would,
building official here,
I would, yeah, I would recommend.
that's
that-
all taken under Mr. Aiken's department.
I would recommend you gentlemen take some of the money you saved by the bond and perhaps hire some help and get this done as quickly as possible.
Yes, sir.
And
Thank
we feel your frustration, and I know that you're upset, but we've all got to treat each other like gentlemen and ladies, and so, you know, my staff is trying to cooperate with you, and we are trying to work with you, and we know that you're mad, but we want to help you. Believe me, we do want to help you in this situation, and we're going to do everything we can to help you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to see you guys back here again.
Sir.
Okay? do your work. Thank you all for coming, and we'll try to get that taken care of, and I think that wraps up our agenda.
Could I have another poor humble taxpayer point, if I may, sir? It's a hot flash from the Combat Information Center of Super Dip for Construction.
Would you come to the microphone and quit your rambling?
Sir? Lo and behold, for 2 days, you've been out of rebar. No rebar has been delivered today. That means your foundation work is going to start coming to a conclusion.
Thank you.
Move out. Have an enjoyable day, people.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Meeting is adjourned.